All right, let's get right into it. So, how do you take a character like Vampirella, someone with, let's be honest, one of the messiest, most contradictory backstories in all of comics, and turn her story into this really deep, philosophical tale about self-creation? Well, that's what we're going to break down. We're going to see how her biggest problem, that chaotic continuity, actually became her greatest superpower on this huge cosmic stage. But before we get there, the story hits us with this absolutely terrifying choice. So let me ask you, what do you think is worse? A universe that's frozen in this sterile, logical, perfect truth, but has zero freedom? Or a universe that's just dissolved into this infinite pulp of contradictory fiction, total chaos, where there's no truth at all? And this isn't just some random thought experiment, you know? This is the central, existential conflict that drives this whole story. So let's tackle that first option, the tyranny of absolute order. The whole story is framed like a play, which is a really cool nod to Goethe's Faust, by the way. And in this play, the role of the director is played by this being named Vrildox. He calls himself the last thinker. Now, to really get Vrildox, you have to understand he's not your typical bad guy. Seriously, he's not after money or power or revenge. He is a being of pure, cold intellect. It's like he looks at the beautiful mess of the universe, free will, art, evolution, all that stuff, and he just sees it as a flawed equation. They're bugs in the cosmic code that he feels compelled to fix. And that right there is his whole motivation. See, he doesn't want to rule the universe. He wants to solve it, like a math problem. His entire goal is to re-engineer all of reality into this single perfect state that's defined by his logic. We're talking about a conquest of ideas, not, planets or galaxies. And this quote, man, it just perfectly sums up his whole deal. As the director of this cosmic play, Dox is demanding a script that is completely clear, totally objective. He wants a universe that runs like a perfect cold equation, with absolutely no room for messy things like, well, us. So what's the end game here? What does his perfect world actually look like? Well, it's pretty horrifying. A universe that's been solved is a universe without free will, without diversity, without life, really. It's a completely sterile, silent reality where everything has been calculated into one single, unchanging and, well, dead state. It's the piece of a machine. Okay, so that's one kind of nightmare. Now let's swing the pendulum to the absolute polar opposite. If Real Dox is the director who demands perfect order, then his counterpart is the clown who offers the tyranny of chaos, a world of endless, flashy, and totally meaningless sensation. And his name is the Continuist. Here's the thing about the Continuist. He's not really a person. He's more like a walking, talking idea. He's the living embodiment of the retcon. You know that thing in comics where writers just decide to change history? That's him. He is literally instability made flesh. He is a metavillain, an enemy made out of pure philosophical chaos. And his goal is every bit as terrifying as Dox's, just in a totally different way. He's not trying to perfect reality. He wants to dissolve it into what he calls ultimate pulp. Think about it like this. He wants to turn the entire universe into a cheap dime store novel, something that's sensational, always changing, and in the end, completely meaningless. In his world, the only real sin is for things to stay the same. So yeah, playing the part of the clown to Dox's director, the Continuous just loves this stuff. He gets a kick out of it. He wants to smash every coherent story, to turn yesterday's rock-solid truth into today's throwaway lie. For him, 1,000 inconsistencies, well, that's not a bug, it's the entire feature. And his power? It's actually fascinating. He doesn't just blow up cities with a laser beam. No, he steals their shared reality. Just try to imagine this. You wake up one morning and the history of your city has been rewritten in 1,000 different contradictory ways all at the same time. You remember your city being founded by Vikings, but your neighbor next door remembers it being built by clockwork robots. That's what he does. He causes narrative decay. All right, so we've got these two horrifying extremes on the table. The director's perfect, frozen prison of logic, and the clown's meaningless, swirling storm of chaos. And now, caught right in the crossfire, we finally meet the poet of this cosmic play, the hero of our story. So, for anyone who's followed her comics, you know Vampirella has always had this massive continuity problem. For decades, it was like, wait, is she a sci-fi hero from the planet Draculon, where rivers flow with blood? Or is she a supernatural horror figure, the actual daughter of the demon Lilith? You can't be both, right? Well, it's these two completely incompatible backstories that make her the perfect battleground for this fight between order and chaos. So, how in the world do you solve a contradiction that's literally impossible? The answer is you don't. Instead, the story uses this really clever literary tool called meta-commentary. Basically, the story becomes self-aware. It looks at its own real-world flaws and says, okay, let's make that part of the plot. And this is where it gets absolutely brilliant. The solution is that her messy, contradictory history isn't a bunch of writer mistakes over the years. No, it's the source of her in-story trauma. It was all done to her on purpose by her mother, Lilith, who used this magic mirror to plant false memories to give her whatever origin story she wanted. So all those real-world retcons, they become psychological abuse inside the story. This move just completely transforms her character. She's not just some cool pulp hero anymore. She's suddenly this victim of profound identity trauma. She's struggling with this deep existential sickness because she literally, truly doesn't know who she is or which of her own memories she can actually trust. So here she is, trapped between these two extremes. You've got the absolute order of docs on one side and the absolute chaos of the continuists on the other. And you realize this external fight is a perfect mirror for her internal struggle. And that's when Vampirella discovers a third path. She's not going to choose, she's going to create herself. In her journey to do this, it's pretty incredible. It basically follows four big philosophical steps. First, she has to acknowledge the trauma, right? This feeling of powerless anger over a past that was forced on her. Then comes the big revelation. She realizes that the narrative chaos itself is the only real truth she has. From there, she can embrace the total absurdity of it all and use it as a source of power. And finally, she transcends every label anyone's ever tried to put on her and becomes her own creator. And it all leads to this incredibly powerful moment, this amazing declaration. She looks at the director and the clown and just rejects their whole false choice. She's done being a puppet in their play. By accepting all the contradictory parts of herself, the Aryan, the demon, all of it, she seizes control of her own story. She literally becomes the author of her own life. So in the end, Vampirella's journey is this incredible transformation from a character who was defined by chaos from the outside to someone who becomes the author of her own story from the inside. And it kind of leaves us with this big provocative question to think about, right? In our own world, which is so full of competing stories and identities being pushed on us all the time, maybe the most radical, most powerful act of freedom is to just stand up and declare, I am the author and I exist.